I want to start by telling you a story. But before we get into that, my name is Jessica. I am a speech pathologist and I am a TPT author. On TPT, I'm known as the Gift Gab. Here on YouTube, I just like to share teaching speech therapy tips and tricks and activities and anything you might need in your room. Joey and Dave are at summer camp. Joey is in fourth grade. Dave is going to be going into third grade. And they've known each other their whole lives. They've grown up together. They've had play dates since they were little. But Dave has generalized anxiety disorder. He really struggles with new situations. He struggles with changes in routine, noisy, busy places, things that, are hard for people with anxiety. Joey does not have these same struggles. When Joey and Dave went to camp, their moms requested that they be put in the same group. And on the first day of camp, Dave is feeling really overstimulated and really overwhelmed. It's the end of the day. They're waiting for their mom to come pick them up in Carline. It's noisy, it's crowdy, it's chaos. Everybody's exhausted. And Joey looks over and he sees his friend looks at his face, reads his nonverbal communication, and can tell that his friend is overwhelmed. So he takes the towel and he puts it over their heads to make their own little room together, and they talk about their favorite video game in their own little secret spot until their moms come and pick them up. I want you to think about that as empathy, right? Joey displayed empathy. He felt empathy towards Dave, and he reacted in a kind and empathetic way to take care of his friend. What are the foundational skills that led up to Joey feeling that empathy in the first place and making that decision to be kind to his friend? So we got to peel back the layers a little bit. And the very first thing that needed to happen is Joey needed to be able to understand and recognize emotions in himself. He needed to be able to identify and remember a time when he felt scared or anxious or overwhelmed and how that felt in his own body. So that was the first step, is understanding that feeling. Now, the next step was the nonverbal communication. Joey was able to look at Dave and could see from his friend's nonverbal communication, maybe it was his facial expression or maybe it was his body language, that Dave was overstimulated and was having a hard time. He was able to read his friend's nonverbal communication. Once he was able to do that, he was able to take the perspective of Dave. He was able to combine all those things together to remember a time he felt that way and see in, his mind's eye, okay, Dave's not feeling very good right now. And I love my friend and I want to help him. Help him, take a break, have some space in the only way that I know how to do, and that's empathy. When we are talking about teaching empathy to children, really where we need to start is going all the way back to understanding emotions in ourselves. And I have found in my career that most children, understand emotions like happy, sad, and mad. We don't really need to waste our time teaching those skills or those emotions. What we need to spend our time teaching is what I call complex emotions. Those are emotions like pride, frustration, resentment, acceptance, hopeful. All of these nuanced kind of emotions, those are the emotions that our students who struggle with empathy are probably missing to some extent. So while the official topic of this video is how to teach empathy, like I said, we really need to peel back the layers of that and start by teaching emotions. I start by teaching complex emotions, and I do this. I have a whole list of complex emotions. So this one is pride. I have relief. I have disappointment. I have frustration. All are going to follow the same format. Okay. So what we do is I define what is pride, and I give examples of times that, somebody might feel pride. And then what I do is I just have a yes or no. So it's going to be scaffolded from easier to harder, like all of my resources are. Yes or no questions. Would this make you proud if you made it to the Olympics in your dream event? Yes or no? You cheated on a test. Would that make you feel proud? Yes or no? So we're just starting by identifying yes or no, does this make me feel proud? And then the student is going to list 10 things that might make them feel proud. So we've gone from kind of that more receptive comprehension to more of an expressive activity where we're expressively writing things that make us feel proud. And then we're going to make it a little bit harder, and we're going to switch it up between you being the student, and they're going to write the name of somebody they know. So in this box, we might have Jessica, and in this box, we might have Michelle. And on the Jessica side, we're going to list, so I would list things that make me feel proud. If I said, I feel proud when I hit a new PR in the gym, or I run my fastest mile ever, or whatever, that's something that makes me feel proud. And then on Michelle, on her side, I might say, well, Michelle feels proud when she aces her chemistry test, or she feels proud when she cooks an amazing meal, right? Those are things that might make her feel proud. So we're starting to lay that groundwork for perspective taking, because remember, I talked about how empathy comes from both perspective taking and emotions. So we're doing a little bit of that here. And we're talking about some things that might be the same, some things that might be different, some things, what makes you feel proud, but doesn't make them feel proud. Why is that? I wouldn't feel proud about getting an A on my chemistry test because I'm not taking chemistry. Like, that's not going to be a thing for me. But my friend Michelle is, and when she gets an A, she does feel proud. So there are different things that can make us feel different emotions, and everybody has different emotions for different reasons. And so that's the first step of teaching empathy, is really focusing on complex emotions and that foundational skill of perspective. But we can't just learn something by doing it once. We have to practice it. So I am a big fan of strategic teaching, like I just showed you, but then we also have to practice. So these are just some emotional drill scenarios. There's just a whole lot of scenarios. For example, your friend got a better grade than you on a test. How would that make you feel? Your mom forgot to get your favorite snack at the store. How would that make you feel? You scored the winning goal in your soccer game. How would that make you feel? So again, we're really still very focused on you, those internal emotions, and being able to identify them in ourselves, because we're laying that foundational framework to build up to empathy. Okay? So once we have a good grasp on complex emotions, then we move into what is empathy. And because I'm me, I have a whole little reading passage explaining exactly what is empathy. And I love to type these out for you, because then you know exactly what to say. I have sat and thought through carefully, which words are going to convey this the best way and the simplest way. So you don't have to sit there and fumble over your words in your session, because I've been there and I don't feel like a good teacher when I do that. I've written out the reading passage for you and some check for understanding questions. What is it? Why is it important? What's the first step to being able to empathize with others? Do you think people who are empathetic have more friends? Why or why not? Thought-provoking questions. So we introduce empathy. And then, like I said, after we know what empathy is, we're going to talk about taking perspective. In the first exercise, it was all about internal, how does Jessica feel? Whereas this exercise, we're now taking it into the perspective of other people. How do you feel? How does Abigail feel? How does Colin feel? How does Alexander feel? Okay, so here's an example of one of my taking someone else's perspective stories. It was Abigail's first time to babysit by herself. At first, everything was going smoothly, but at 6 o'clock, the baby began to fuss. Abigail tried everything she knew to do, but nothing would calm the baby down. The baby cried for an hour straight without stopping. So our question is, how does Abigail feel? And I have a little word bank right here. Why do you think she felt that way? So we're now working on, again, like I said, taking somebody else's perspective. So we're going to practice that. I have several of these scenarios for students to practice taking somebody else's perspective in a very structured way. But then we don't just want to take somebody's perspective. We want to act on that perspective. So that means we want to express empathy. What would you want someone to say or do for you if you were in pain or sick? And then the next question is, what could you say or do for someone who is experiencing pain or sickness? So we're kind of like building on that. What would you want someone to do for you? What could you do for someone else? So kind of those are the same thing. If I was sick, I would want somebody to let me rest. What could I say if I see my husband is sick? I can say, hey, babe, why don't you go take a nap? I can see you don't feel good. I am expressing that empathy that I know he doesn't feel good and I feel bad about that. So that's what we're trying to help our students understand is what would you want? And then you do that for somebody else. So we have that, if someone was sick, if someone was excited, if someone was disappointed, if someone was proud, if someone was anxious, exactly those two things. What would you want? What could you do for somebody else? Kind of, just working through it in a really structured, strategic way in the speech room. So hopefully when they're not with you in the speech room and they see, ooh, my mom doesn't feel good today, I should let her take a nap or, whatever, then they're going to start hopefully being able to carry over those skills. Of course, we know it's a lot more complex than that, but this is the foundational framework on how to teach empathy. And again, like I said, I don't just want to teach it. We've got to practice it multiple times. So this is where I have some drill scenarios come in. We're going to pretend our friend was telling us about the following situations. We're going to tell our friend how to respond empathetically. So our friend says, the girl who sits next to me always gets better grades. Let's pretend. How could we respond empathetically to our friend? My mom forgot to get my favorite chips again. I've asked 1,000 times. Okay. How could I respond to my friend empathetically? So we're just going to practice. So you can kind of see how I have scaffolded this resource on how to teach empathy, starting at the bottom and hopefully working up to something that is a little bit more complex. Once you finish this resource, you will have all of the tools in place to begin kind of naturalistically teaching, and it doesn't have to be this formal teaching, but now we see something happen in the speech room. Ooh, let's take a moment and let's respond empathetically. Let's talk about our emotions, or Susie's emotions, or whatever. So that's kind of what this is this gives you that teaching foundation so that then you can focus on it naturalistically as it occurs. This is in my TPT store. This is my #1 bestseller of all of my resources. I think that you will find it helpful if you have some students who are struggling to express empathy. I hope you have a better understanding now of how to teach empathy and how to teach complex emotions. If you think this would be helpful for you, please go find it in my TPT store. I will link it below, but if you want to search for me on TPT, my name is The Gifted Gab, and I hope you find exactly what you need to help you with your next session, and I will see you again real soon.